All right. Hello and welcome aboard another episode of the Gallant Says podcast. It is Thursday, March 21st, 2024. We're recording this thing at 10:25 p.m. Central Time. Bunch of stuff to discuss because your boy's been lazy and sporadically doing this thing. Part of it has to do with the new show, Gallant and George, noon to 3, ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. The other part of it has to do with some added responsibilities, which may or may not have angered some people in the last 24 hours, even though it wasn't my fault. Interesting, huh? Anyway, a lot of stuff to discuss on today's show because I've missed a lot. Texans have new uniforms. Texans making some signings. Texans have some concrete plans going forward to avoid another succession-style coup like we saw a couple of weeks ago. I've pissed off some Texans fans. And also on the basketball side of things, Jalen Green has been playing out of his ass, as have the Houston Rockets. They just won again tonight. That's 7 in a row, 127-117 over the Chicago Bulls. Maybe not Green's best night, 26 points after the 42-point effort earlier this week, but got in a dust-up with DeMar DeRozan. And for anyone who likes Dylan Brooks got into DeRozan's face. Dylan Brooks had 23 points on 10 of 13 shooting. I think he got ejected from the game. Got to say, Dylan Brooks being an enforcer. I like it. I like this version of Dylan Brooks. So we'll talk about that a little bit later and perhaps some of the very over-the-top backlash that some of my colleagues have received regarding the Houston Rockets. But we'll talk about some more of that in a little bit. The news for the Houston Texans today is that they added a cornerback. Huzzah! But the problem is it's once again another former top 10 pick from the 2020 pandemic NFL draft. Jeff Okudah, who they signed earlier this offseason, is now joined by CJ Henderson. Okudah was drafted 3rd overall by the Lions back in 2020. He played this past season with the Atlanta Falcons, who played against the Houston Texans. And C.J. Henderson was the 9th overall pick in that draft. The Jacksonville Jaguars took him. He was on the Carolina Panthers last year. Generally not a good sign when going into your 4th season as a former first-round pick, you're on your 3rd team. Gut reaction to the move. I'm not expecting much out of Henderson or Okudah. I do respect the balls by one, Nick Caserio. Fuck it. Just bring in top 10 graded talent at cornerback. See what happens. And I respect D'Amico Ryan's confidence in his coaching ability because I'm sure he had to sign off on this. And I'm sure that in film, there were some things that he probably liked from both of those two since they went up against the Texans. This was, at times, a bit of an issue for Bill O'Brien, signing guys that he thought played well against the Houston Texans back in the day. Remember Chris Polk? Bang Bang Chicken and Shrimp. Remember that? I think that was a Hard Knocks scene. But sometimes I guess it could work out. I'm not expecting that much, though, out of Henderson or Okudah. I still feel that best case scenario, bringing someone like Steven Nelson back would be better, or potentially drafting somebody would be better, but might be a little harder to do that now since they also, over the course of the past week plus, traded away their first-round pick to the Minnesota Vikings, pick number 23, and a 7th-round pick for the 42nd pick in this year's draft, a 2025 second-round pick. Okay, that's nice, and a 2024 6th. So it's going to be really interesting to see what they will do in the coming weeks. They did make another move in the past 24 to 48 hours. They signed another defensive end. And, man, they have been loading up on the defensive line. Danielle Hunter, of course, the biggest signing. Danico Autry as well, 28 sacks between the two. But most recently, they brought back Derek Barnett, who they brought in from Philadelphia in the middle of last year. I thought he played really well down the stretch. Nice to have him back in the fold. Mario Edwards away from the Seattle Seahawks, adding more depth. And on the defensive tackle side of things, you're not really seeing that many people that you recognize. And, of course, they traded away Malik Collins. They didn't get Eric Armstead, but Tim Settle, resigning Khalil Davis. I don't know how much that does for you, but they are loading up on the defensive line, for better or for worse. And that was something that they said that they were going to do going into free agency. They also said that they wanted to get a better wide receiver. Over the weekend, they tried to get Keenan Allen. That deal did not come to fruition, even though they offered more than the Chicago Bears. They offered a third-round pick. Chicago offered a fourth. The Chargers acting like the separation of one round because of, I guess, potentially giving Keenan Allen to an AFC contender is just paranoid, dumb bullshit, but that's kind of on brand for the Chargers to operate that way. I don't think that's necessarily a Jim Harbaugh move, as that is a Spanos family. We don't want to have to compete with somebody who we thought was really good for us in the immediate past. So they don't get him, but they did get a wide receiver. They did. But he was just on the team last year. And hey, he scored more points than anybody against the Baltimore Ravens. Steven Sims had the punt return touchdown. Now, and when he was on the offensive side of things, I mean, things were rather disastrous, especially when they tried to use him in some of those speed sweeps that they would typically have Tank Dell do. But hey, they got their wide receiver. And that is why I have on the YouTube caption for this video the question, are they loading up at the wrong position? Because they added all those defensive linemen and they're adding all of these project cornerbacks. But I know what you people want. You people are mad at me because I don't think that the Houston Texans need to give more help to CJ Stroud on the offensive side of things. You got Nico Collins, you got Tank Dell, you got Dalton Schultz, you got Joe Mixon. It's a pretty good quad to work with. Noah Brown is a third wide receiver. Could you do better? Sure, but you know that the guy works in your system. You know that the guy can produce. He's a third wide receiver. I don't think you should be looking at every single year thinking to yourself, how do we make the best fantasy football offense when you got a guy like CJ Stroud who's going to elevate the talent around him? And I know a lot of you guys are going to push back against me on that front. I don't fucking care. I don't. You're just not going to change my mind on that front. Defense is where they need help. Are they getting the right kind of help on defense? That remains to be seen. I wanted to see a defensive tackle signed in free agency. I wanted to see a safety signed in free agency. Hasn't happened yet. But they're focusing a lot of their they're focusing a lot of their money on the defensive side of things. And if you listen to this show a couple of weeks ago, we talked about how the cap, as far as money towards the offense and money towards the defense, was pretty out of whack. The offense was getting like $159 million and the defense was getting significantly less than that. So they're going the other direction. But I'm curious as to how you guys feel here. Some of these comments right now about the Texans are about the cornerback position. It says Texans 22. Okudah at least has done upside, but I don't see Henderson even making the team. You take flyers on these guys, and you're right. There's a chance that both of these guys don't end up making the team. KB says, just makes you wonder how much Xavier Howard and his agent were asking for if they can't accept a hometown deal. Yeah, because Howard has said multiple times that he wants to play here, but at the same time, Xavier Howard signed a really expensive contract not too long ago. There's an ego side to this, I imagine, for any player. When you have signed a contract to the level that Howard did, and off the top of my head, I forget what it was. Let me look this up on Google. Xavier Howard contract. 5 years, $75.25 million. That is a lot. To go from signing a contract like that to signing a deal that is a hometown discount, if you got any ego at all, you're going to at least blink twice at that at first. And that's understandable. Is it about the money for a lot of these guys? Yes, but I mean, wouldn't you want to get as much money as you possibly can if you are somebody who at a point was considered one of the best corners in the NFL? So I'm not going to dump on Xavier Howard for that. Shelton believes a heavy offensive draft is coming. I don't know about that. I feel like they're still going to go defense in the draft. Stan Bonsu says defensive tackle, linebacker, and safety will be addressed in the draft. But so far, I like the moves on defense. I really like the Danielle Hunter move. I like the Danico Autry move. The other signing that the Houston Texans made, and I'll be honest, I get... I gotta look it up because every single time I'm like, am I gonna pronounce this right? I don't want to fuck this up. Azeez Al-Shaair played pretty well for the Titans. It's interesting, some of the guys that they're bringing in. Autry, Texans saw him a lot. Azeez, I'm not gonna say Azeez. I'm sorry. That's why I keep on having to think twice about it. Azeez Al-Shaair is somebody who played against the Texans a lot. Mario Edwards was a Titan not too long ago. They're bringing in guys that they're familiar with, for better or for worse. I think that is noteworthy at the very least. What other comments do we have? Shelton says, how much was Blake Cashman and Steven Nelson worth before they got in their system? Well, I don't want to give the system so much credit to say that, hey, Cashman was good because he was in the system. Cashman was flying around to the football and making a ton of tackles. And Steven Nelson, I'm not going to act like Steven Nelson's the best corner, but he's definitely a good corner. More comments. Waka Flocka Buck says, still need an all-district safety from Florida. I volunteer. If they says just sign me, they cut me in training camp because I blow compared to NFL players. But sign me in training camp, just give me a little bit of money. I'll try hard. I'm actually, once this thing is done, I'm signing up for a flag football league with ESPN Houston Texans beat reporter DJ Bien-Aimé. So, good luck, ACLs. Good luck. I'm curious if you're mad that the Texans haven't gone after a wide receiver. At least a wide receiver of the caliber that a lot of you guys have been banging the drum for. Because a lot of people have been getting mad at me for saying, yeah, I don't think they need it. And I don't think they need it. I don't. And, some of you guys are saying, well, you want to make the quarterback's job easier. You want to make it easier for him to manage. Well, yeah, but you also, when you have a good one, you can get away with less. That's what your thought process should be. It's about team. Look at the Chiefs this past season. They know how good Mahomes is. He just had Kelsey to work with. Sure, they drafted guys and they bring in guys, but going into the playoffs, you looked at the Chiefs' offense and you were thinking to yourself, I'm not even sure if Travis Kelce's the same player, but you still feel pretty good about Mahomes being able to make it work. Now, on the defensive side of things, with Snead, with McDuffie at cornerback, with Chris Jones in the middle of it, Justin Reed, ex-Texan, you felt pretty good about the Chiefs' defense. It's one of the best in the NFL last year. This is what a great quarterback allows you to do. It allows you to focus on the team, and it is a team game. It's not fantasy football. And I get it, the depth, wide receiver, blah, 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 blah. I think I hate to be dismissive and come off like an asshole here, but I just feel like you're simplifying it, believing that the reason that they lost to the Ravens is because they did not have another receiver. I really think it was because their interior offensive line, which was banged up and rotating pieces in all season long, was not up to snuff to go up against that Baltimore team. And, okay, maybe a better running back, and Joe Mixon is more of a threat, but I don't think it had to do with the lack of weapons for C.J. Stroud, who, against the Browns the week before, was bombing the ball all over the yard, to Nico Collins, to Dalton Schultz. KB, any take on Stephon Diggs coming to the Texans? No, he didn't play well at the end of last year, and I think he's too much. Stan Bonsu says, I like the wide receiver core. Really good. Dr. Barrett says, not mad. I'm relieved. We need to draft a guy. I do think they will draft a guy. Because I think if Nick Caserio is thinking to himself, hey, I'm going to draft out of I'm going to trade out of the first round. He probably feels like there's a lot of guys between pick 23 and 42 who are similar, and some of them are going to fall. And you can get more value, and then you hopefully get a very high 2025 second-round pick for the Minnesota Vikings, borderline first-round pick next year. They also, and we're catching up on everything that the Houston Texans did over the course of the last week, they gave Joe Mixon a contract extension without him playing. which is something that they did with Shaq Mason after trading for him last year. And it's interesting that we bring up Corey Bear because Corey and I got into disagreement on Twitter about this. I always get, I guess I get weirded out, and I won't understand when people defend an athlete or a celebrity for something shitty that they've done as if it should never be brought up again. And sometimes it's simplified. The pushback to it is everyone makes mistakes. And sure, but there are degrees of mistakes. And the mistake that Joe Mixon made when he was an 18-year-old kid in college has been caught on video and is going to be a part of his story forever. It is. So there was some pushback when Sean Pendergast asked Nick Caserio on Sports Radio 610 about that checkered past. And maybe less so about the incidents that took place in the last calendar year. And if you've listened to this podcast before, we've mentioned them, and we could go into detail about them again. But for the sake of brevity, there have been a couple of incidents in 2023 where, at the very least, you're like, well, I'd like to think Joe Mixon is on the straight and narrow after that incident, which I'm sure he learned a great deal from as an 18-year-old kid back in the day, something he's got to live with the rest of his life. But those two incidents, you're like, what's going on here? At the very least, right? It's not necessarily a reflection of who Joe Mixon is now. Just these are two incidents that happened, and then you can't help but think about what happened in 2014, because that's always going to be a part of his story, no matter what. And it is surprising that the Houston Texans traded for him and that the Houston Texans gave him a contract extension. And here's the thing, guys, for us in sports media. Sadly, we do have to ask that question. And I know some fans, when a guy's on your team, you don't want to bring up the past and you're hoping for the best for this guy. And look, I'm hoping for the best for this guy. I'm hoping that Mixon has learned from it in the same way that Ray Rice seemed to have learned from it after getting blackballed by the league. Mixon didn't get blackballed by the league, though. You know, this happened in college, and he still ended up being a second-round draft pick by the Cincinnati Bengals. And maybe that's a Bengals thing. But he got away with something that a lot of us would not get away with in real life. And it's because of how talented he is. He gets this second opportunity that most wouldn't. And again, that's, that's how sports generally work. The best of the best are going to get opportunities because of how competitive things are, no matter what kind of a person they might be, or no matter what they might have done off the field. Maybe some singular action that makes people paint the person in a specific light. But some people got so damn defensive about it in this back and forth that I had with Corey. Corey, I like you, man. I got no issue with you, but clearly we disagree on this front. And it led to one person just coming in, I think Rogue Sports. And Rogue Sports, he brought up some other points, but I'm still distracted by Rogue Sports saying, well, what about Mark Wahlberg? And it just made me think to myself, okay, when we do whataboutisms, generally we do whataboutisms with guys in sports who have done something that's fucked up. We generally point to like, hey, well, you're talking about a black guy doing this. Why aren't you talking about the white guys who have done this? And it almost always goes to Ben Roethlisberger, who did something horrible in Millersville, Georgia. There's no denying that. The NFL even thought so. They suspended him. He's very lucky that he's the quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Very lucky. It's not the only episode of bad judgment on his part off the field. But Joe Mixon is the guy in the Houston Texans that we are asking about because he is the guy that we are going to now see on this team playing 17 times a season and hopefully more than that. So we have to ask about him, and we do have to bring up the story, and it is noteworthy because they never brought in a guy like this before. What about Mark Wahlberg, though? It just made me laugh. And the person was telling me, like, to find God and stuff like that. And I'm like, listen, this is not me saying, like, Joe Mixon isn't a better person or anything like that. I just think it is interesting that the Houston Texans have gone away from the days of old, which a lot of people used to get pissed off at them for, of like saying no to players with, what's the word? I guess like a checkered past or something like that. And people would be mad. Oh, there's too many Boy Scouts, as if bringing in, I don't know, like some asshole like Greg Hardy was going to make things better. But they did bring in Joe Mixon. I think it's fair to ask questions about what happened back then in 2014. Corey and I went back and forth on it about what actually happened to set him off. From what the report says, the person he punched did not call him a racial slur. And that was the thing that we got in an argument about. And I'm sure there's some comments right here. I haven't read any of them yet. We'll go through some of them, Corey. All I'm trying to say is that did happen. And I think some people are trying to paint it in a way that it didn't actually go down, at least based off of the police reports. And that's all we have, other than the video, to go off of are the police reports. And per Mixon, and I don't know the order of when this happened. I read the report. It was kind of unclear. A friend of the person he punched called him a racial slur. He, at some point, supposedly called this person a homophobic slur. Two wrongs make a right. No, I'm just saying, this is what happened. And ultimately, the girl walked away inside. He comes in, boom. And we all want to move on from it. And guess what? When the regular season starts, we will. But for us, people in the media, it is interesting that the Texans brought in a guy like this. But what about Mark Wahlberg? Let's see. Let's read some more questions. Dr. Barrett continues saying, it's relevant to discuss Joe's past without making it the main thing. Look, I agree with you there. But it's always a part of it, you know? It sucks for him. I'm sure he regrets this. 100%. How could you not? I mean, it cost you millions. Number one, you would have been a first-round draft pick, but also number two, it's going to follow you no matter where you go, no matter what you do, no matter how you change. And that's just a part of it. All right. I want to move on, though. H-Town Swarm says, I'm kind of confused by this CJ Henderson signing by the Houston Texans, to be honest. Guys, I don't think it's really that confusing. They're just basically picking up a lottery ticket and hoping for the best, you know? Remember what Daryl Morey used to do with the Rockets? It didn't work out that often. But Daryl Morey liked to take flyers on former first-round picks. My guy, Johnny Flynn from Syracuse, my favorite player when I was in college. They brought him in. Didn't work out. Hasheem Thabeet, who I hated when I was in college, played at UConn. Big, absolute giant. Never worked out in the NBA. He would bring in guys and hope that it would work out. Royce White, guy who had a lot of demands of the Rockets because of mental health protocols, was what he said. That was a guy who was super talented. And I think without those issues about like not being able to fly on planes, I think that this is a guy who had the talent to be a very good player. Everyone was talking about all the skills that he had. And like, oh, like poor man's LeBron, blah, blah, blah. Who knows? But that's what the Texans are doing here. They're just bringing in a bunch of guys who were early draft picks before. Henderson, Jeff Okudah. I'm not expecting that much out of either of these guys, though. I'm just not. Tora McJohnson has a thought. This is a bit of a turn, but hey, fuck it. Since I have been doing the show remote with Joe George, Galan and George, noon to 3, ESPN 97.5 and 92.5, I suppose this is the only way I'm going to be able to get this on the internet. From the sound of things, at least based off of what baseball and the Dodgers want us to believe, Shohei Ohtani had $4.5 million stolen from him by his interpreter. And as someone with the masculine urge to mansplain Japan, because I know a thing or two about Japan. I watched Tokyo Vice, just watched the most recent episode today. Good episode. I watched Shogun. Just watched the most recent episode Tuesday night. I know about Japan. Okay, do you? I'm debating buying a kimono. I'm debating buying a katana. I can't afford either. But if you just put it on your credit card, it doesn't matter. But as an expert in all things Japanese, because I watch 2 television shows that have subtitles, I can safely say this. The Shohei Ohtani drama is suspicious, 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 Anyone seen Fiddler on the Roof? Is that reference going over everybody's head? Suspicious! Suspicious! It's suspicious. Having watched Tokyo Vice, I feel like I know a little bit about the underworld of Japan. And I've got to say, the idea that somebody who is not Shohei Ohtani would be allowed to bet $4.5 million on anything, and I don't know if this was one bet, seems suspect. That he would be able to run up $4.5 million seems suspect as well, unless Ohtani's interpreter does more than just interpret, unless Ohtani's interpreter does a lot of things for him. I don't know what his salary is. Hey, if he's making that kind of money, good for him, right? I can't go any further than saying it's suspicious, though. I just think the idea that this guy was able to gamble away $4.5 million of someone who he was probably pretty close to's money seems weird, especially just given how private we all know Shohei Ohtani is. He didn't want anyone to talk about his recruiting trips. We just found out he's married. This is a guy who keeps everything extremely close to the vest, perhaps closer to the vest than Nick Caserio. Joseph says, do we really talk about the Astros being in the trash can thing? It follows us, but we don't talk about it anymore. We don't have to. 2 World Series, baby. It's over. It is over. What's up, Siraj? What's up, Toro McJohnson? What else do we have? Joe Blue says Tokyo Vice is a great show. Tokyo Vice is fucking amazing. Word Deuce says, please don't ever do that again. No, I will sing whenever I want. I will. What else did we want to talk about? Oh, yeah. Jalen Green. He's been doing well, huh? Sorry, this one's a little bit all over the place. I've been just doing a bad job of doing the show on a regular basis. I probably got to do this on a daily basis and make it 20 to 30 minutes or something like that and post it in podcast form after the fact. Because I do want to be able to, nothing against Joe. I just want to be able to do stuff by myself from time to time as well. Go on the tangents I want to go on. So, Jalen Green tonight had another good game. The Rockets won their 7th in a row, but everyone wants to talk about what happened on Tuesday night. And on Tuesday night, I mean, Jalen Green was fucking outstanding. 42 points, efficient. It was against the Wizards team that, let's be honest, blows. They're the worst team in basketball, and they were missing, I think, 6 to 7 guys. So you have to take it with a bit of a grain of salt. But at the same time, he deserves a ton of credit. And I'm happy for him. Because the guy was getting absolutely flamed by a lot of Rockets fans and by a lot of neutral observers just a month ago when going into the All-Star break, Ime Udoka had this to say. We're thinking about some changes in the lineup. That game against Memphis where he said we were like the softest fucking team in the league. Going out of it, you were wondering, oh, what, is he going to actually maybe move Jalen Green to the bench or something like that? And Green, for his part, was not handling his struggles well because it seemed like he was lashing out privately at some of the people that cover the Rockets on a more regular basis than me. So you see all that and you're like, shit, what's going on here? Is this going to work? Is he going to buy in? But over the course of the last month, he has. And the Rockets, all of a sudden, are within striking distance of the play-in tournament after yet another win tonight. They're just, I believe, 1 game behind 500. Who would have thought that was going to be coming the rest of the way? And, okay, maybe it's going to be difficult for them to get into that play-in tournament. They are 2.5 games back of Golden State, who has the tiebreaker over them. But they deserve a lot of credit for continuing to fight to the end because this is a weird time of year. March is a weird time of year in basketball because you've got good teams that maybe realize that they're not going to get the 1 seed, or they think to themselves, is home field advantage really that much of an advantage in 2024? And then you've got teams at the bottom who fucking suck, and those teams aren't trying at all. So you add those two things up. And you wonder, okay, just how seriously should I take March basketball? Most people are focusing on the NCAA tournament today. I'll be honest, I didn't watch any of it. I also didn't fill out a bracket. Does that make me not a sports fan? Whatever. Kind of feel bad about that one. Did watch it when we were at Carbach earlier today, but there was only one TV in front of us in the seat that we were sitting in. So I really only got to see one game. Hopefully tomorrow at Nick's place, we're going to be there all day. You should come out, hang out with us. It'll be a little bit better, and it will. Nick's place is awesome. There's so many TVs there, and everything's cheap, which is my wheelhouse, baby. Right down the road, too. So anyway, it's hard to take March basketball seriously. And this is where I'm going to push back a little bit against the crowning of Jalen Green as a star, which so many people want to do. Green has certainly played his way into an interesting position where, one, okay, he's either a part of your future, or two, he's a tradable asset. But at the same time, we do not definitively know that the way he plays at his best, which is with pace, so he can drive and blow by guys, because he's one of the most athletic players in the league, is that going to work when Alperen Sengun comes back? Is that going to work? It's a fair question to still ask. I know that some of this streak by Jalen Green happened with Sengun healthy. I also think, though, that it is not a guarantee that in non-March basketball, with both of these guys on the court, that this offense is going to work the way that we want to see it. Green is taking advantage of a tremendous opportunity that he has right now with Sengun off the court. He kind of has to be the Rockets guy, and for the most part, he has been. Maybe less so tonight, but for the most part, he has been. And again, he deserves a ton of credit for that. I think it's great poise for a 21-year-old who's about to be a dad to respond to a hard-ass coach in Ime Udoka who, in as many words, called him out and answered the call. I'm very happy for him on that front. He's 21 years old. No matter how weird some of the things he might do with the finger painting and the Josh Christopher stuff, you want a guy like this to realize his potential, and you hope that it's here. And I was beginning to wonder if maybe he would be better suited to be a sixth man elsewhere. And I still kind of feel that way. I think that the way he plays is perfectly suited to be an elite sixth man, maybe sixth man of the year kind of stuff. Like Jamal Crawford back in the day. Just a guy who comes off the bench and is just better than the second teamers for other teams and can run the offense essentially by himself while other guys get a blow. And still play. But he has to get better at shooting. Otherwise, it's not going to work with Alperen Sengun. To his credit, he's gotten better, but you wonder about the consistency on a night where he was 4 of 12 from three like tonight. He's had some good nights shooting from three recently, but a night like tonight, a little bit more of a reality check for him because he has not been a great three-point shooter. You can get better as a three-point shooter, though, over the course of your career. What's interesting about the Alperen Sengun stuff is a conversation that took place on the bench. John and Lance, I forget, they're not the bench anymore, but with John and Lance, John Granado, Lance Zerline, two people I have a great deal of respect for. I don't know if they feel the same way about me. Del Ollier, who is their producer, hosts the 10 to noon show on our station. I like all three of them. And they were talking about the dynamic of Alperen Sengun being able to play with Jalen Green. And a lot of people got mad at a supercut, context-less video that was posted by a Turkish Alperen Sengun fan to show a couple of times Dell jokingly calling Sengun the big Turkish stiff. The backlash to this has been, in my opinion, fucking ridiculous. I know what Dell was trying to do there. Dell was cosplaying essentially as the Rockets fans who believe that Jalen Green is better than Sengun and that Sengun gets in Green's way. That is 100% something I even saw on Twitter from 2021 written by a Rockets fan. I looked it up. I wanted to see if it had been ever said before. The backlash to this, though, became insane. Is calling somebody by a proper adjective xenophobic? And I tweeted that out last night. Because he just called him the big Turkish stiff. I mean, honestly, the big Turkish stiff, when you think about it, sounds like, I don't know, some sort of sexual thing, right? Some sort of like a gas station boner pill or something like that. But people were getting mad at it, and I don't understand why. It's a proper adjective. If we called him the big English stiff, the big French stiff, calling him a stiff, it's hyperbole. It's being done sarcastically. Do you look at that and think to yourself, that's xenophobic? The German stiff. Well, we definitely don't do it with the Germans after World War II. We don't. The big Russian stiff, probably now with what's going on in Ukraine, we wouldn't mind about that. And on top of that, who would seriously call Alperen Sengun, who is so damn athletic, who is really good footwork, who's a great passer, who would seriously call him that, other than somebody who's like a psychotic Jalen Green stan? But the backlash to this, to me, was fucking insane, guys. Insane. He was called the big Turkish stiff. That's not xenophobic. And I got to talk to the people of Turkey for a second. You guys know what xenophobia is. You guys know it very well. Now, I don't know if Erdogan, your dictator, interesting element of Turkey, they like cats, so that's nice, but they got a dictator. And one of the dynamics of Turkey has been the denial of something that they did that was literally one of the most xenophobic things that's ever happened. I don't know how many people are familiar with World War I history, but the Armenian genocide is something that Turks deny happened. And we're talking about 600,000 to 1.5 million people who were murdered by the Ottoman Empire because of paranoia that they were working against them during World War I. That is xenophobia. Killing people because they are of a specific race, that is xenophobia. Being afraid of people because they are of a specific race, that is xenophobia. Calling someone jokingly the big Turkish stiff, you are equating the two of those. And want me to give you more of a history lesson? Because this isn't the only time that Turkey's, I don't know, been a little xenophobic. How you take a look at their record during the Holocaust with the many people that they, over the course of the war, despite being officially neutral, that they denaturalized. They denaturalized 3,000 to 5,000 Jews. You know what happens when you get denaturalized? Well, you get deported to concentration camps, and at least 3,000 Turkish Jews were sent to those. What happened? What do you think? But they're going to talk about xenophobia because of the big Turkish stiff. And I'm sure that they're not allowed to learn this in the history books because they live in a repressive country with a dictator. But you're talking about xenophobia when this is something that your country's done over a proper fucking adjective. You pussies. I mean, this isn't the only time that we've seen somebody get in trouble for a proper adjective over the course of the last couple of weeks. There was a CBS Sports Minute where somebody was talking about how the women's tournament's more exciting to him. He brought up Caitlin Clark. Who's the girl for LSU? Angel Reese. And then brought up the Brazilian girl who keeps punching people. And people thought that was horrific. I saw an awful announcing headline. And awful announcing is a tad liberal. Let's just say that. I'm not going to judge them for it. I think that a lot of people who lean left, they do have noble intentions. But at the same fucking time, shockingly offensive to say that somebody is the giant Brazilian woman that knocks people over. She's knocking people over. She is giant. She's a basketball player. This makes me think about some of the stand-up comedy acts where people, you can interpret the word Jewish as just being a descriptor or as being something that's derogatory. You could say the same thing about Mexican. But have we really gotten to the point where saying something with a proper adjective, calling Alperen Sengun the big Turkish stiff, are we really at a point now where that's xenophobic? Because if that's xenophobic, Jesus, we are screwed. What isn't xenophobic if we can't call people by proper adjective? If I say that the snaggle-toothed English man, like, is that xenophobic? Based off a stereotype. The French nicotine addict. The German Jew hater. Is that the same thing? So, I think it's weird that there was this much backlash to it. I support John. I support Lance. I support Dell. I can't believe how soft some of these people from Turkey are, especially with the blood on that country's hands, acting like calling somebody, clearly jokingly, the big Turkish stiff is a fucking crime. Cry me a fucking river. I do not take your country seriously now, but I do like the way that you guys treat cats. I do like that. And Istanbul does seem pretty pretty. I think I connected on a flight there once. Doubt I'm going to get in there again after I talked a little shit about old boobs. So there you go. There you go, guys. How many people stuck around for this? Rick Hagwood says, humans are fucked up. How many Native Americans did we kill? Yeah, lots. Yeah, you watched The West, the PBS documentary by Ken Burns? Something else. Waka Flocka Buck says, Amen Thompson is Ben Simmons 2.0. Man. I don't want to say that. Because Ben Simmons never cared, and Amen Thompson, he's good to get in a scrap or two. You know? Anyway. That's all we got for today. Hopefully this is decent. I'm sorry I haven't been doing this on a regular basis. Part of it's just been laziness, as it always is. You notice how I changed the bottom line now? It does say the new time slot for the Galan and George show, but at the same time, I also just said, I don't know when I'm going to put these up. Probably try to do them after the end of the Galan and George radio program. But anyway, guys, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I do. We're going to be out at Nick's Place tomorrow all day long to watch the NCAA tournament. I don't think I'm going to post this in podcast form. I'm not sure what the numbers have been for the podcast, but we might try to do something where we combine some of the best takes from this, since we're kind of all over the place, and turn it into a 2-time-a-week podcast episode, but we do the live stream on a semi-daily basis. So until, I think Sunday night, we're going to try to do one. We'll see. Again, this is something I have to hold myself to. I appreciate y'all joining me. So long, farewell. Have yourselves a wonderful weekend, and we'll be back at it when